Boiled, but far from boring. This Croatian classic is perfect on a cold, rainy day, if you're feeling under the weather, or anytime just because you feel like it. Lešo Meso literally means boiled beef, but is probably one of the finest delicacies to come out of Croatia. This specific recipe comes from my grandma, and she would make it for us all the time when we were kids. So come along. Today we have Lešo Meso. For this dish, what you'll need is 4 pounds of short rib. It's important to have the bone, so you can get the bone broth in the soup. Carrots, chopped and quartered. Parsley root, chopped and quartered. Parsley. Celery root, chopped. 3 cloves of garlic, peeled. And 1 onion, halved. And 1 leaf of Savoy cabbage. The vegetable ingredients come in a little soup packet that you can get at any market here in Croatia. They always come with carrots, parsley root, celery root, and the Savoy cabbage leaf. Sometimes there'll be something extra in there. Usually they don't come with an onion because I think everyone has onion to begin with. And it's super easy to just buy like a kilo of onions and have them for a week. So the traditional way of doing Lešo Meso is that you cook the beef, you boil the beef in the water, and then you make the soup separately. However, I think it might be easier to just kill 2 birds with 1 stone and do it all at once. So we're going to cook the beef in the soup that we're going to serve it with. So let's head on over to the stove and we'll start on browning the beef. All right, so we're over here at the stove, and the first thing we're going to do is brown our beef. I've already put a knob of butter into the pot and it's melting now, and we're just going to add a bit of olive oil as well. I really like the flavor of olive oil and butter together, especially butter and beef is the greatest thing, as Joey has said. We're just going to wait for the butter to melt, and then we'll put the beef in. If there's still some fat on your beef, you can put the fat side down to help it render out and add some more flavor. Oh, I didn't even talk about cutting the beef. Oh well.
How'd you prep the beef?
So I got the beef from the butcher. It is going to be short rib with the brisket on top. I'm trying to remember everything, because the beef cuts here are different than they are back in the U.S. What I did is I had the bone and then the meat on top, and so I cut the bone off. We're going to save the bone later to add to the broth to make the bone broth. And then the beef I cut up as well to get rid of most of the extra fat in sinew into more manageable chunks, and that we're going to brown as well. 2 beef in there at a time, just to not crowd the pan, or I guess in this case the pot. And we'll just let this brown, so we'll be back when all the meat is browned, and we'll move on to adding the vegetables and the bones. If you can't get any bones, that is also okay. It, in my opinion, just adds some more flavor for the soup. My grandma usually uses chuck without bones in it, and it always tasted really good. So it's up to you if you can find it, if you want to. After the bones have been there and browned a little bit, we're going to add all of our vegetables, except for the leaf of Savoy cabbage and the onions. We're going to add those in with the rest with the water. But first we're just going to add the carrots, the celery, and the parsley root to help them get a little browned as well and add some more flavor. I did not take the bones out. I did leave them in there just so they can keep browning a little bit as the vegetables cook as well. Cook the vegetables for maybe 2 to 3 minutes just until they start to brown a little bit, and then we'll add in the water and then the rest of the vegetables, so the onion and the Savoy leaf plus the parsley. Once the vegetables are browned a little bit and you can start to smell them, you know it's time to add the beef back in. Make sure you get all the juices that have come out as well from the plate. And then we're going to fill the pot with water. The amount of water is just to cover everything. So I took a big bowl and we're just going to add water on top. So after you've added the water, we're going to add in now our leaf of Savoy cabbage, our 2 onions, as well as our parsley. And if you remember from the Klukanci sa šalšom episode, a little trick, if I can figure out the way the parsley works. We get the stems all up in a row, in a bunch as such. So the flour is down at the bottom, and we're simply just going to add the parsley leaves into the soup and leave the stems out, so at the end it's easy to take them out. While the meat and soup is coming up to a boil, be on the lookout for some scum coming to the surface, and you're just going to want to skim the scum out as well. The more traditional way is to just have the beef into the pot, bring it up to a boil so the scum releases, pour everything out, re-add water, and then go with that one. But I find that takes a little bit too much time and is not really worth the effort. So it's easier to just skim the scum off the top. What scum is? What is scum? Scum is just proteins that are being released from the bones during cooking. It is not harmful in any way. It is totally fine to eat. The only thing is it might make the soup a little cloudy. So if you're going for something really clear, you do not want to have scum in your soup. But like I said, scum is completely safe to eat. It's totally fine. It won't harm you at all. So we're just going to wait for this to come up to a boil, then we're going to skim the scum off. We'll season everything and let it to simmer for about 2 hours. If you have beef, 2 hours is usually the right amount of time. For veal, if you want to go with veal, you can use veal as well, more closer to an hour. So you can see the white foam coming up here, mainly along the sides. That's going to be your scum. So what you want to do is take a small spoon and a little receptacle as well, and simply just scrape along the surface to get off the scum, put it away, and go around the pot as best as you can. One of the other nice things about doing it this way is that if you have any extra fat from when you're browning the beef, you can take it away so your soup isn't going to be too oily. This is a bit of a labor-intensive process, so like I said, you don't have to remove the scum, and if you don't want to, spend a few minutes skimming it all off the top. You don't have to, but the soup will not be as clear as if you did. However, with everything browned, the soup isn't going to be that clear to begin with, so this is, at this point, personal preference. So I'm just going to continue skimming the scum off. Once it gets to a boil for beef, you want to let it go for about 2 hours. The tricky part is making sure you don't overcook the beef and then it gets tough. So the way to check to make sure the beef is done is just take a fork, and if you can easily pull this beef apart, it's ready to be served. And I'll be back once we get to that point. Once the meat is done, and you can tell by putting a fork into it and twisting, and if the meat falls apart easily, then you know that it's done. We'll just remove the meat from the soup and we'll put it onto a side plate to save for later. After, some of the meat seems to be falling apart, but that's good. It means we've rendered off a good amount of fat. Just fish around for it. You'll try to get all the meat out. You don't want to overcook it. Once it overcooks, it starts to get dry. But make sure you keep the bones in there, as you can continue to simmer this for a little while longer without having to worry about overcooking the meat. I know there's more in here somewhere. I can't wait for Honda to tell me I'm doing this all wrong. I think that's actually everything, because I can't find any more. Alright. After you've removed your meat to a side plate, you can continue to let the soup simmer to taste, or if you think it's ready, you can add in some, we call them mezzanzi. They're basically just egg noodles. You can add them in, you don't have to add them in, but I think it adds something in when you have them together. These cook for about 2 minutes, so however long yours cook, add them in at the end of your soup cooking, and then serve. Once your soup is ready and you've left your meat to rest, it is time to serve. Now this is going to get a little contentious, because the traditional way of serving the Lešo Meso is first to serve your soup, you finish your soup, and then you serve the meat. However, I'm more of a fan of having the meat together with the soup. I feel like having the meat in there adds it a little bit more, and especially if maybe you cooked it a bit too long and it got a little too dry, having it in the soup is a great way to mask that. So this is the way I'm going to serve the Lešo Meso. So first, take your bowl and get a ladle and try to get as much of the vegetables and the noodles you have in there into your bowl. This is should be a very, very hearty soup. Some carrots in there as well are amazing. Right? And if you're going to serve with, don't want that to spill. If you're going to serve with the meat, you don't want to add too much into here, just so it's not overflowing. So to serve your meat, take your fork and a knife, and we'll just cut into nice pieces, as such. And then we'll add it directly into the soup. I can just hear every Croatian saying this is not right. But it is right. Whatever you want to do is correct. So, here we have it. Lešo meso. Dobar tek. Really dumb. I've had this thing for a year, the pepper grinder, and I've just found out you're supposed to twist it off and twist it back on.
What have you been doing?
I've just been like trying to pull it right off, and it comes off once I like muscle it off, and then I just put it back on and it snaps.
Okay, so we're seasoning this?
We're seasoning this, yes. Just salt and pepper to taste. At least at first, you don't try not to overdo it. That way, at the end, you can always add more, if you can ever take it out.